Hello, this is Tweekc with the 6th episode of Shazpod. Once again, joining me is JonniTheJuicyJ.
Hello.
Greth.
What up?
And this time we have special guest Mabeline, who's a really good player, also really active in the community. You can see some of his posts on the forums. One of the ones we're going to be discussing a lot today. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the comments. Go ahead and say hello, Mabeline.
Hello.
Alright, so this podcast today is going to focus mostly on the competitive matches we've seen. Since we've last been on a couple weeks ago, there's been quite a few competitive matches between some of the clans in the community, and I just wanted to see what everyone's take on it would be. For example, let's just start with probably one of the most basic ones, the use of the Raider, Ranger, Sentinel comp. We see it a lot. We see it in pretty much every match between Europe and North America. What do you guys think of this particular composition? Why is it so powerful? And what should we do to make it not as common? Because it is quite annoying to see.
Well,
big question.
Personally, I think it's, with those three classes, for the Sentinel, it's hit scan. It's very reliable. And so the Ranger and Raider SMGs have the same thing. They're not hit scan anymore, obviously, but they are
projectile hit scan.
They are still extremely reliable weapons in almost any situation, and you can say ahead of time that you're always going to do damage with it, not like a disc where if you miss one, you most probably won't do any damage on whatever is flying past you.
Yeah.
So I think the main point here is efficiency and, you never have a situation where you completely miss.
I think that's the key point when we're talking about the balance of these things. It's that we have all these... for the Ranger and Raider, we have these high rate of fire weapons on these classes that have this versatility, and they can fight outdoors, they can fight indoors, and they can... they can get kills in all these situations that you need them to, and this sets them apart from all the other classes, right? Which are just bad in a lot of situations, and I think that's why people use them the most.
Go
on. When you say they're bad in situations, what is it that makes them bad? Do you think it's the utility of some of their other weapons? It's just not as easily used, or do you think that the weapons on the Raider and Ranger are just that much better than every other weapon?
Well, if you look at Tribe's gameplay in the past, I mean, it's always been heavily dominated by the chain gun, right? And, these are the only classes with a chain gun. You look at all the heavy classes, and they're like big and slow, which makes them easy to hit, and they don't have any means of fighting someone in the air. They just have all these splash weapons, and like the Brute has a shotgun or something like that. It's so you look at that, you just go like, well, when are they going to be able to fight? It's like indoors. But when we're playing these small 7v7 matches, and most of it happens outdoors, they just... they don't have the opportunities to use their other weapons, so they die real quickly.
Yeah,
so,
I think.
Primary weapons.
Yeah, I think also because Bart's been talking a lot about the scrambler and all that. Thing is, there is probably potential in some of the other classes. Some of them need to be reworked. We always keep bringing up the jumper. I mean, it's just stupid. But right now, people are just sticking to what they know is good right now, and of course Ranger right now a little bit overpowered with the Thumper having its correct damage now because it was bug fixed. It it did 600 damage, but it was supposed to do as much as a disc. And yeah, there you go.
I'd actually like to add something to that, which I've tested. The damage spike, the 910 damage the Thumper does, is only on direct hits, which means that if you use the Thumper for jumping, it will never ever do that high damage. It only does the 600. So even though they bug fixed it, they didn't nerf what was mainly the problem, making the Ranger a really powerful dueler and a chaser.
Yeah. And that means that it's filling all the roles right now because there's always drawbacks. I mean, the Raider, we do see the Raider in North American games, but only for really the grenade launcher to clear the stand, for instance, which, by the way, makes any attempt at a heavy on the flag completely useless. Also, of course, with the inclusion of the reach perk, which I'm still really bitter about. But yeah, it's just... the roles are filled by a single class right now, and the Sentinel is the only way to chase, really, because you need to whittle down the kappa. That in turn reduces the amount of light kappas, because right now light kappas are used for high speed, quick grabs. Usually they get sprayed down immediately, fall down, and then you have the passing game that we've seen. It was nice to see. I mean, it was an exciting thing to see people actually pass that flag over and over and over again, but I don't think that's actually the intention. I think there should be a more of a standard thing going on here.
Yeah, it's all of this is really just talking about how D-heavy the game is at the moment, and when you look at the Sentinel, like it's so good that the game just becomes instantly D-heavy, and I think some of that problem is actually just the fact that we don't have the competitive rule set that makes it so you don't spawn in your loadout when your generators are down. That would change the game a lot. I'm not sure how though.
Well, that would obviously change things, because I've been discussing this with our team's incredible snipers, and they all agree pretty much on that as a sentinel, take for example a situation where you get attacked in your sniping position. At the moment, you're simply better off pressing K, respawning, and continuing shooting straight away, because the spawns are usually the best sniping positions on the map, or close to the best sniping positions. So instead of engaging someone, or instead of, for example, sending some players from your team to harass the snipers, that is pretty much pointless at the moment, because as soon as he respawns 5 seconds later, he's back in his sniper loadout on his perfect sniper spot, which is usually a different spot from where he got killed, so outside of range of the harassment.
Yeah, you can't stop them. You can only, irritate them.
You can
for
delay them
5
a few seconds,
time.
exactly. And if it's a clever sniper, then he'll see that he's going to lose it and just press K and be fighting again 5 seconds later, which is, that is definitely something that will be affected by spawning naked, because the naked spawn will not have a sniper rifle.
Do you know what the rules are? Is it you always spawn? You spawn without a loadout, or is it
it's
only when your generators
down.
are down? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's still debatable, but it's probably going to be a soldier.
I guess that would be the best choice when the gens are down, because that way the generator will get some of its importance back.
But
the game will change quite a bit, even more than just the snipers, because right now, yes, the sniper defense is incredibly strong and can be changed with the generator, but I feel so much more will change with the generator in terms of pacing of the game. You'll see a lot more concerted plays, I think, in offense, because you'll be working to move in together to maybe take out the generator or work while you have your generator up, things like that.
It might actually make, maybe a brute or an infiltrator a good choice to just take it down real quick, suicide, and get on with it. But it's going to slow down the game tremendously.
I think there's another problem with spawning without loadouts when the gen is down, because the logical naked spawn would be a soldier, and the soldier is still a very capable and powerful class that can pretty much, sort of like the ranger, fill any role, but to a lesser extent. So I think once the gen goes down, certain teams will just decide to go 8 soldiers or 7 soldiers for a while.
I don't think that would work in the North American meta. Maybe in EU it would, but in North America,
you're calling us bad now?
No, it's just you guys clearly do play.
You play differently.
Differently, air quotes. Okay, thank you very much. That's noted.
Well, listen, you don't know Raider exists. Why don't you play Raider, by the way?
Well, at the moment, I think we all feel that Ranger is simply a better Raider. The grenade launcher on the Raider is much harder to use and has less knockback, and only explodes instantly if you direct hit. So, in general, the Ranger is just easier to use to the point of a lot of people already having mastered it. So, I don't know many people that would be more effective with Raider than Ranger. Simply because the thumper is so incredibly easy and gives you almost 1,000 damage on hit. I mean, the flag defense has become very easy for Rangers, for example, because you can one-shot lights.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't use it right now.
The Raider is still, aside from his SMG, is an indirect damage class, spamming, base rape, that sort of thing. His grenade launcher will never be a precision weapon, but the thumper clearly is. it's a straight trajectory pretty much and explodes on contact at all times. So it's
a predictable
much
trajectory.
easier to use. Yeah.
Right. What we see in North America is people stand like far away from the flag stand and just like spam at the flag stand with the grenade launcher to clear, which is pretty effective. And the fact that they have a shield pack means that as stay at home, you have to go far out of position to like maybe kill them or maybe not. Like your only backup is really your snipers because you have to be way off the stand. I think that's real interesting.
Yeah, the spam is pretty darn good at clearing out flags. It'll knock everyone away from it for a good chunk of time. Keep the and no team damage allows the capper to zip right in and out through any sort of grenade. No issue.
Or orbital strike. Oh my God.
Yeah. But that brings up the point of when the sniper does get his nerf because people are crying for it, or it's going to make defense even more important because once that flag's off that stand, there is no way of stopping a guy except, of course, to corner him in the corner of the map. But then you'll see a lot more light cappers probably. I don't know how it's going to affect. But if the Wraith comes in, you have that one shot that you can have before they go around the hill and just vanish from sight.
Well, if the energy sniper comes in, that means people will get a choice. Either have a charge time or have zero charge time. And, well, I think a lot of the Twitch gamers out there will definitely go for the Wraith setup simply because you can do a full damage shot instantaneously. Even though you lose all your energy, it will still be easier to use because you don't have to know that your enemy will still be in sight in 5 seconds when you're finally charged.
It rewards accuracy a lot more, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, true, because you can barely spam with an energy-based rifle because the charge will most likely matter more, and it will keep you grounded if you keep spamming.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you can actually have those two exist nicely together. I mean, I'm trying to think about it right now. It just doesn't.
Originally, I thought that what we now call the Wraith, the energy-based sniper class, would be the stay-at-home sniper, and the Sentinel, with its charge instead of energy base, would be the moving sniper. But now that they put constrictions on charge time when you're moving faster, I think their roles kind of overlap, and I don't think the Wraith will actually get introduced anymore.
Right. That's what I sort of touched on that in my post. Like, I was like, you can't have all of these mechanics like coexist at the same time and like still have them work out because they overlap too much.
Something will get put to the side by the community somewhere.
Yeah, right. I mean, something will just be like, you use this in pubs and you don't use this anywhere else. Like,
well, Team Fortress had the same thing. Weapons that in pubs are great and in competition are absolutely useless.
When Greth, you mentioned the of course inevitable sniper buff, I was kind of got me thinking, what would be the change in defense, for example? Because right now those snipers, along with some of the fast-moving projectiles, are what really tends to stop these cappers before they hit the flag, or even a little while after they get the flag. I was just wondering, what do you guys, all of you guys, think would replace that Sentinel sniper if we get a Sentinel nerf before we get perhaps the Wraith sniper, or whatever we see? Yeah,
before we start on that, I will say though that if that happens and the Sentinel is not going to be the linchpin of the entire defense, you need to see a buff for disc jumping or chasing in general, because otherwise you're gonna have to have half your team hanging out on every single corner of the map, trying to see where guys are coming in.
Just waiting for the flag capper on their stand instead.
And
base swap.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's just going to be constantly like trying to clear out the people out of your base, and it's basically going to be Blood Eagle in the Diamond Sword base and Diamond Sword in the Blood Eagle base.
I don't think so, actually. I think that it would just...
Go ahead.
Okay, I think it would just make Shrikes more important, and that on the stand splash like really key to whether someone gets home or not. And otherwise, you're not going to be getting much. But you have to remember, like Shrikes still exist, so that just makes that just shifts the focus, and they are your other chase tool. Like you have the cutoff on their stand with your Pathfinder, maybe with the Nitron or something. But other than that, it's like you have your snipers and you have your Shrikes. And if you remove snipers, really, then all you still have Shrikes. So
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, any capper, say Scrambler, Ranger, Pathfinder, the usable cappers at the moment, are killable by 2 people with a single projectile. So I think, yeah, like you said, splash on stand is going to be much more important. For example, a light capper can be pretty much blocked by 1 person every single time.
yeah.
At the moment, I mean, a soldier can one-hit a Pathfinder every single time if you're good enough. And 2 soldiers would make the likelihood, or even just switch to splashing on the stand, would pretty much kill him 100% of the time. So, I think stand control is going to be a lot more important when, I say when, I mean if snipers get nerfed. Because I don't think Sentinel will get nerfed, because if it does get nerfed even further than it is now, it won't be of any use in publics anymore. And
It's the
public
interesting
players
balance,
still want to snipe.
Yeah, and that's maybe another point.
If anything, the balance of the Sentinel preferably should be more towards publics than competition, but that's really hard to do with a 100% accurate high damage railgun. That is kind of in the skill player perspective.
Yeah, and that might bring us to heavies, for instance, because I can see the problem right now. Heavies are kind of pointless. They have their uses if you're called Veer, for instance, but if they buff them or they change their dynamic, they're probably going to be even more of a nuisance on publics. When I say nuisance, I mean a complete genocide on 2 legs. And that
If they give Juggernaut even a fraction more power, I'm gonna top 100 kills on publics.
Yeah. So there's a dangerous thing there. Of course, I don't know how much you can do with server flags.
Is it?
Go on.
Is that actually dangerous, though? I mean, people place a lot of artificial import. The reason heavies are so good is because people place a lot of artificial importance on generators. I think as people play more, they will just realize that they don't matter as much and don't just walk into the gen room dying all the time.
Yeah, obviously that's in public at the moment. It's pretty much generator warfare 24/7. So heavies are the most powerful class, or the most powerful armor type by far, because everyone keeps walking into them. But heavies are, except for the Doombringer, very specifically designed for indoor combat, and like you say, it's going to get less important.
Yeah, but on publics as well, actually the deployables start making a difference, because technician turrets and even force fields to some extent, publics will always be important.
In publics you also always see more deployables, because a comp team is not going to put 3 technicians down.
Exactly.
And
You just don't have
having
people.
3 technicians on a full pub is a regular occasion.
That's nothing. That's, a fraction of your team. I would say that they really do need to change heavies if they want them to see any play in competition. I think they would need to buff them, actually. And I think any other, but, what about the publics? I think that needs to be addressed with map design more than it needs to be addressed with anything else, I feel.
Well, yeah, I could see heavies getting buffed if bases become much smaller. Not necessarily smaller, but more outdoor-based, like open roof, for example. If you pull the roof off Katabatic base, then it becomes very biased towards lighter classes.
Well then, let's see. What else should we move on to? For example, your post, Mabel, you mentioned a lot of things, the doubling up, the tripling up, the quintupling up of items such as grenades, different rifles, things like that. Do you see that as a detriment, or is that more just annoyance that you face?
I think that is actually a really that makes it very difficult to balance the game. It's extremely detrimental to being able to balance the game because you lay this expectation that all of these weapons are actually going to be different when it's like really hard to balance like a bunch of different chain guns. Like, we have 4 chain guns right now, and they're all just slightly different. You know, they all have slightly different leads, and that's annoying for old players, and it's hard to balance. They have different damages, so I think that all of this makes it so that your game is very difficult to balance, especially at the high end. It's attractive for new players in some ways, but I think it's ultimately unsustainable because they don't have any repeated weapons at the moment, and it's ultimately unsustainable to keep adding classes like that. It just cannot be done and keep the game balanced at the same time, or else you have just large swaths of the loadouts which are just unusable.
Well, I for one hope that they will standardize all the weapons that we now see slight variations of. For example, the discs. The damage variations are great, but obviously the Brute's massive vertical disc is going to hurt you a lot more than the light disc, but the fact that they all have different speeds is really bugging me out, and it honestly does not make a difference in lethality of the weapons. It just makes it really hard to switch between disc classes.
Yeah, I've got the same problem right now. I mean, the switching from a Pathfinder to a Brute will mean that 2 or 3 rounds you will hit nothing, because you just have to adjust. And with the Inheritance now, Inheritance is good, right? 50%, okay, leave it. Don't matter anymore. But a Brute's always going to be standing still and isn't going to benefit nothing from Inheritance, whereas a Pathfinder is going to benefit from it a great deal. But I think that's enough difference already in just how the class plays right now. Then add to that, I mean, it's not really logical, for one, to have the Brutes actually fire slower, because it's a heavier gun. You'd think maybe it has some more punch, you know?
Yeah, I think fire rate and explosion damage and splash radius are enough of a distinction. We don't need projectile speed in there as well, because that just makes it harder for people to learn.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I understand why the secondary gun of the Juggernaut shouldn't be able to one-shot people, alright? But the others, I mean, the difference between the Soldier and the Lightspeed Fuser of the Pathfinder, why? I mean, okay, if you're going to choose a model, do pick the one from the Pathfinder, because that's the original. It looks a lot more cool.
No, I actually like all the different models. They should keep it that way, but projectile speed doesn't have to differ if the gun looks different.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still, in essence, a disc, so I honestly think they should remove that distinction completely, because it just gets in the way.
I would actually say that even variations in damage are very difficult to balance things on. If you look at any competitive FPS, it's like they don't have that many guns. And this game has like 2 for every class, 24, 23.
Has tons already, and this is all. Like Hi-Rez said, they're going to add a lot more classes. So I hope they will choose for standardization.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is it's a decent idea because it makes every class supposedly feel very different. But like Mabel's pointed out, you get in and you don't feel incredibly different, and that's probably what they're going for. It's a little more marketable in that sense, but it's just the game. The weapons are mostly the same, and it's more upsetting to the competitive players to have them all so similar.
Yeah, and I do understand that if people are going to unlock classes and they just have a different armor with the same gun, it's gonna feel a little cheap. But I don't know how to really. We bounce back to the big problem there is, of course, the loadouts, the unlockability, the lack of custom classes, all of that. You come back to that, and it's going to be a very fine line. I do not envy the person who needs to find a solution to that, but something needs to happen.
Did you read my post? Yeah, I thought I did a pretty good job of keeping them feeling different, even if they have like the same weapons. Did you?
Yeah. I read it. And I agree. I mean, I think your solutions for it were quite good. I mean, there's still a little things here and there to nitpick, but ultimately, I think the solutions you presented on I say definitely the vast majority of them would be improvements.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, the packs and the loadout, the stuff like in the grenades and stuff are the important thing. But I think that they're never gonna go for a solution like this because, like you see, soldier chain gun disc launcher, grenade launcher, scrambler chain gun disc launcher, plasma gun, chain gun disc launcher, chain gun disc launcher, and then again the plasma gun. It's I don't know. For the way they're doing the free to play right now. That's not going to work, I think. But I don't know. This is the only solution that I see, but I don't see IRS actually agreeing to it or doing it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's really uncomfortable about this is that you have this free-to-play thing works like in the opposite direction of we're making an esport thing, where like you want to make something that can be played at a really high level, by really skilled people that will actually enjoy it when they play it. And I think to do that, you need to introduce versatility, and I think that the versatility is impossible to introduce without at least replicating some of these like classic weapons. Like you can introduce some other things, but like when you look at like chain gun disc launcher, that's like looking at LG and rocket launcher and Quake or something. Like that is standard, and that sort of needs to happen to make like versatility happen without just a big combinatorial explosion of just weapons and balance.
But yeah, but don't remove the Args Buster because it's fun in pubs. And I will become good with it, and I will become the first competitively viable scrambler.
Well, I think it's
Get some
already...
big boots.
No, it's perfectly viable as a capper, because you can accelerate faster and more times than a ranger without losing as much health. And hit scan pistol is great for, tickling people that are chasing you. So as a medium, I think it is the best capper. Now, definitely agree with Bart on this.
Yeah, but I want to use it on offense, not just as a capper. I want to shoot
But as soon
him.
as you have to use the Arcs Buster, you might as well switch to Ranger. Honestly, I think the better a player becomes, the harder it is to hit the Scrambler. Obviously, with most guns that is true, but with the Arcs Buster, it becomes much more apparent because of the massive delay.
Yeah.
Do you find it strange that we have all of these like low damage weapons that give these massive impulse that are way bigger than the disc? Because like I don't think we ever saw this in any Tribes game before, where
You're talking about the Nitron and the Flashbang.
The Nitron and the Flashbang are just way better than the disc in like every way.
Yeah, I find this very strange indeed. You can't call me a Tribes vet, but I know enough from Tribes to know that if you want to go fast, get your disc and your energy pack. But, if you want to go fast in the new Tribes, get a disc class. And that's just, the disc is just not the best way of going faster. Even among the projectile, like the slow-firing projectile weapons, the Thumper is much better. Because it has, for some reason, much more impulse. But on the impulse subject, I would definitely vote for tripling impulse on self-damage and keeping impulse on enemies similar. Or maybe upping that as well, but we definitely need to be able to chase quicker.
Yeah, that goes back to exactly what you just said, the chase. From the flag stand, somebody was mentioning they were toying with the Impulse on their own little offline server, and they set it up, and he was getting about 150 from a disc jump, and he said it felt exactly like a disc jump should feel. Instead of the 30 to 45 you might get now, at least adding 60 to 90 kilometers an hour, whatever you want to call it, of speed from the 30 now would be, I think, quite a huge improvement over the chasing game.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and it might actually
also
make heavies viable because they can disc jump several times and they might actually get something from it.
I think that's another issue we need to look at. If they're going to increase impulse, then I think it should also be according to armor size, because obviously lights should move faster, and if you give the Juggernaut more impulse than more impulse than he has now, then I'll be able to go 300 plus with it easy, because you can do 6 disc jumps in a row. or 7 if you do it really carefully. So 7 disc jumps that each give you up to 90 kilometers an hour. That's gonna be absolutely stupendous. So,
Well, impulse is just like the velocity you get from increasing impulse is based on mass of the object you're moving. So if you're a heavy, you get less of a boost.
That's
right? You don't
true
get the
in real
90.
life, but in
physics, that's real.
In tribes, I mean, in tribes, heavies accelerate downhill slower than lights, which doesn't all make sense.
Well, I mean, that was how Tribes 2 worked. I mean...
yeah, of course,
that's
how Tribes works.
Yeah. I'm not sure about this game, but it seems like that would be... Like, if I was going to do it, that's how I would do it. So... I really do think they need to boost disc jumps, and it's so perplexing. Like, why didn't they do this in the first place? Like, we've asked about it so many times, and they haven't responded.
I think it would also alleviate the pressure on our poor energy regen, because I've been saying this for months. I think we need an energy regen similar to what the Pathfinder has on heavies, and then adjust the rest accordingly. And that would, either that or an increase to disc jumping would help immensely with the dead spots where you just end up on midfield without any speed and energy and just have to walk around for minutes. And the chasing, which is pretty much impossible. So I think either one of those or a combination of the two would pretty much be a must to make off-base play a lot more interesting.
You see, Yes, I find it really weird also that right now we have all these perks that increase like maximum energy instead of energy regeneration rate. I thought that was really that is not what I need when I'm in a heavy.
Yeah, exactly. The plus 10 energy pool, you never have max energy anyways. And I'm not sure if having 10 more energy pool also makes your energy regen
it should.
The equivalent faster. It should, but I don't know if it doesn't. Either way, I never have max energy, so I don't get to use that extra 10. So, those perks are pretty much meaningless.
They were among the last ones I always got. They just don't feel as useful at all.
I do, however, like using 2 plus 10 energies on the radar because it gives you more shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with Raider, that's really the only class that when I get attacked, I just sit on the ground with the shield on instead of flying about. So, for the Raider, because it increases the shield back, it's great. But for other classes, I don't see the point of 1 or even 2 energy perks.
Don't worry, I'm sure they'll add the increased run speed back.
The most useful.
Oh yeah, and stopping distance as well.
I leave stopping distance off. I want to skid because it's
exactly.
You can use that to slow down when you're skiing and going faster than some pub capper. Because I never go faster than anyone real.
That's a good point, actually. I want to remove mine.
Yeah, we were talking about it in Ventrilo with my team the other day. We were saying how the game would be that much better if the stopping wasn't so quick. Put it back to, I know, sounds stereotypical, around Tribes 2 levels where it was a lot more gradual. You could use it to change your direction, to change your skiing path on the fly, make for a bit more majestic travel, and increase the skill cap a little bit, I think. You
say gradual, but in Tribes 2, whenever I let go of spacebar, I always felt like I was skidding along the ground with my face. It's gradual, but very jagged and edgy.
Painful.
Yes.
Jolly good then. Okay, so is there any other points that people wanted to bring up?
I don't know, maybe we should dabble into the inheritance talk. I'm kind of scared to do it, but
we've mentioned it before. The inheritance is now 50% all around, which is awesome. I know in previous casts we had mentioned Smooth P and his following of people who want 100% inheritance.
Acolytes, yes.
Mabel, what do you feel about the 100% inheritance? What's your take on that?
I feel flat 50 is a good middle ground. I don't think that 100% is actually as intuitive as people say it is. It seems that way, right? If we were like pure, just like, beings of like pure vector arithmetic, then like sure,
Aim for
I'm
like the
all
goal.
for it. Yeah, yeah, I'm all for it. But in like reality, he's like, well, you have to, take note of like how fast you're moving, which means you have to look at the terrain. Like, I already do all of these things anyway because I'm human. Like, your brain, you sort of just like lead where you think it's gonna go, and then shoot, and your intuition takes care of everything else. I think that he's just overthinking the whole like I need to get mid-airs thing. And on top of that, there really isn't very good depth perception to be able to tell exactly what velocity someone's moving with. So it seems sort of it's weird. Like, you're just going to be aiming for the ground most of the time anyway. Mid-airs are usually happen relatively close, where you don't need to worry about all of these other factors weight too much. I feel 50% is good. Yeah.
Good. It's the right answer.
Well, yeah, I sort of have to agree. I also think that inheritance is only in tribes for one reason, and that is because the game has too big a variability in movement speed and too much distance to actually have one singular projectile speed. And obviously in the older Tribes games it was a higher number, or actually 50 in one of the versions of Tribes 2. But I didn't even think 50 was necessary, because Tribes Ascend is smaller and a little slower than the old games, so it needs less inheritance to compensate. And thus I am very pleased with 50%. It is more than I expected, and it feels lovely. I don't think 100% well. Sorry?
The discs are actually slower than they were in Tribes 2. And Tribes 1, actually.
Yeah, true, but distances were bigger.
Yeah. It's,
Go on.
Oh, I have nothing to say.
Damn it! Yeah, no. What do you think when they made the fish patch physics that everyone's calling it now? That after
Physics.
Yeah, before physics. Yeah, oh boy. Before TO made that post, everyone was like elated about the inheritance, and then suddenly the face of the entire forum changed into a deep, seething frown, like, what have you done?
Honestly, I think it is because when inheritance gets changed, people force themselves into easy mid-air situations. I was doing that as well. Basically, people try and fly, because they know they're going to be bad with inheritance, they try and fly in a straight line at someone when they do a mid-air. And then generally, physics felt good, because the only direction you actually had inheritance was in line with your momentum.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the further you looked into it, also on a, touchy-feely basis, the more it started sucking. Because obviously there was barely any sideways inheritance and a lot of forwards.
I tried ignoring the forums myself, and the first time I played the patch, I didn't know they were changing or whatever, and I thought it felt weird. I don't know about you guys, but I was like, it felt good when you were chasing somebody, but in every other situation I was like missing, like my discs are going in directions I don't understand at all.
Well, that's exactly what I had as well. When chasing, you tend to follow someone in a straight line, or you intersect him, but you're shooting straight away from yourself in general.
Generally, yeah.
Because you're pointed at the person you're chasing. And, that felt fine. But then, as soon as you get into like a base defense position or light defense, where you're skiing circles around the base and mid-airing people, or trying to, then it becomes extremely dodgy, because you fire sideways and expect more speed or more, momentum in a certain direction than you'd get.
Yeah, and I think
it
people
almost
picked
felt
up
like Quake sideways and Tribes forwards.
Yeah. It was, but people immediately picked up on it, because that's probably why all the investigation was going on. But I just wonder why they did that, why they tried to get a fix like that in before, and then just immediately after, of course, the shitstorm on the forums, but changed it to a flat 50, so they had that prepared already. It's really strange. But anyway, yeah.
you don't actually have to prepare it. I mean, you change one number in a file somewhere, and then
Well, you
boom, it's
always
fixed.
have to test, I mean,
Well, I guess, yeah.
they've probably been working on that's the fish patch solution for a while because it's a really complicated one.
It's not that complicated. It's like it can be expressed in a relatively short equation, and
I think it was fairly close to 50% inheritance forwards and like 20 or a little less sideways.
that's I think that's what people settled on. It was 54 and 20 side, and that it didn't work in this game. It was weird. I've played games with different forward and side inheritance and gotten plenty of mid-airs in them, but I guess this one's different, and it just didn't feel right when playing it. So,
Since we're talking about mid-airs, I would just like to squeeze in something here that I've been saying for a while. I think we really need a change in mid-air accolades where you get them for every hit, not just kills. That's really frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Really weird that they only grant them on kills. Like, why?
Yeah, because often I get, like, for example, a heavy, you scare him, so he jets up and you mid-air him 3 times and then you have to finish him on the ground because he can't jet anymore. And that really, really grinds my gears because you get these 3 amazing shots and then, well, I sometimes catch myself sitting there waiting for the heavy to regen so I can finish him with the mid-air as well.
I've done that. I've done that before.
Bubs.
Sit on a hill going, come on, jump,
Come on, jump, piggy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And then
But
they
yeah,
do.
At least the noise. At least give the noise of a midair if you hit, maybe even without
I
points.
just want it to be recorded. Like, I don't think people should earn more than they do right now for making lots of mid-airs, so maybe having the amount you get for each mid-air and then putting it on every single mid-air, including non-kill hits, or lowering the price even more. I wouldn't really care. The point is that I want to get my recognition for my awesome hits.
Well, I mean, people have always wanted this. We have mods
Yeah,
and
exactly.
servers forever that just like, you hit a midair, this is the distance, and like, here's your midair count. Like, not
Well,
just on kills.
That's
but,
actually
like, on all of them.
a good idea.
nice.
Why not add, like, for example, when the accolade pops up, there's enough room on the accolade itself to put, like, a little distance readout.
36,540 as it is right now.
At the moment, it's a little buggered.
Little bit broken.
Around the map twice and then straight in the face.
Good discs. Were there any other topics that people had imagined to talk about today?
Well, another thing that we were discussing earlier about the prevalence of the fast fire weapons because they are more reliable and efficient. I think, and I'm pretty sure I'm one of the few people that actually wants this. I think it would be a good start to, for example, just throwing random numbers in the air. For example, double the fire rate on all slow projectile weapons and lower damage on all weapons by about 50%. Of course, exclude classes that don't have any slow projectile weapons because they won't, otherwise they just get disadvantages. But take, for example, a soldier then. A soldier and a ranger would both have to rely a lot more on their faster firing slow projectiles and only finish with their assault rifle and pistol. And right now, I still see, like, I didn't ever see this as much in Tribes 2 and Vengeance, where people would just pick up the cane gun and completely chain you from 100% health. And now in Ascend, it's all about just getting one clip of hits, killing a person, and you don't switch anymore. So I think pushing the fast fire weapons more towards a finishing niche would be a great start for a more skilled gameplay.
I think that would be, that's definitely what we want to do. We want to move the fast fire away from being the center of attention, but I think increasing the fire rate, while would be fun, I think isn't necessarily the only way to counter it. Maybe do a little bit of that speed increase, but come in with decrease the rate of fire of those fast fire projectiles, but that's kind of difficult. I would say, if anything, a small random spread. For example, the chain gun in Tribes 2, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a little while, had some spread to it. not much, but it
No,
was
no,
there.
no, 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 no,
No, it
no,
didn't.
no spread, no randomness, please. Come on.
Oh,
No, I agree.
I
We
think
don't.
it's
I don't prefer randomness at all. If anything, just lower the projectile damage. A spread really annoys me.
honestly.
I'd always prefer a lightning gun over a spray gun.
Yeah, but it has the problem where it just gets too good at some point. I mean, it's you can't have this super accurate like rapid fire weapon that doesn't like taper off at distance, because you need the chain gun to fit multiple roles in tribes. You need to be able to chase, and you need it to be that rapid fire weapon for like close quarters. And I think that random spread is one of the ways to introduce that. Just going no randomness is really easy, but I think it's a bit short-sighted.
I don't know.
I got
Maybe
one.
if you really increase the fall-off damage of the weapon, then it'll still be a high-skill thing to hit all your shots at long range. And at close range, it's always a bit harder when you're all jumping around each other. And voila, there you go. I mean, if you, like, after a couple of yards or meters or whatever, you already engage in a very rapid decrease in damage. Or, I don't know, maybe hell, if... make it ballistic, that the bullets actually have gravity.
What did you think of the heat mechanic that I proposed? Because it does introduce randomness, but not like flat.
So the more you shoot, the hotter it becomes, and the bigger the cone of fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I guess that would be fine, because people can still choose to burst and maintain, close to 100% accuracy, and then do less damage, but, rely more on their accuracy, their personal accuracy. So that would be, a great compromise, and you would still be able to fully automatic, just empty clips one after another point-blank range.
That's the thing, though. If you're going to introduce the heat and also have the reloading, you're going to have two mechanics just holding the gun back.
I'd like to see
right.
the ranger burn his hand every time he empties a clip.
Yeah.
Just because I hate him so much.
I scratched reloading when I was like heat, like because heat and they overlap in these weird ways. But
Yeah, I'm guessing
I
that's
would
another
not have them coexist. Yeah.
that's another thing I really liked from, for example, Tribes games and Quake, main example for me, is that there is no reload. I don't like the clip mechanic. I would much prefer heat.
I think it's good on some weapons. But that mechanic, it's like Tribes, particularly Tribes 1 grenade launcher, I think, is very spammy. And I think you can... the clip mechanic on the grenade launcher is really cute, and it's really clever, and it's a good addition, I think, to have it be able to, you can spam 3, but then you have like this long reload to be able to, do something. So you can clear the stand as a capper or something, but you like have this punishment period.
Oh yeah, I meant the bullet weapons. I actually agree that the clip mechanic for both the Arcs Buster and the Raider grenade launcher are great. It makes them better at what they're good at. Burst firing, clearing out areas instead of maintained auto fire explosions.
Yeah, without being like ridiculous. I think that's really nice. But I agree they're very bad at bullet weapons.
You know what? Maybe if you give the soldier a similar mechanic, maybe 3 discs, 4 discs, 5 discs, and actually have a long reload.
Nice.
You don't, and there you go. There you have the difference between the classes, because don't give the light spin fuser that. Just give the Pathfinder the shoot, reload, and the soldier actually give him a clip.
I would honestly light a torch and start the crusade if they make the disc the clip based. I just don't want to see that.
Yeah,
I really
it was like that in Tribes 1, wasn't it?
No.
No? Okay,
Negative.
no. All right, there's something else then.
Don't worry, guys. We will.
Yeah, but
lynch
if you have,
Greth later.
if you, listen. Okay, fine. I showed my StarCraftiness.
No more Greth next episode.
What a noob. What a noob.
No, listen. If you do that and just double the fire rate of the soldier, soldier disc as it is now, probably with a damage decrease. I'm just spitballing here. But
What, you're talking about the double-barrel disc?
I just don't want to see that single hand reload every single time in a space shooter. It's stupid.
I suppose on that point it makes a little bit sense. No, I mean, not being just a raging person about it, I do see where it could work. Could be interesting, but it just feels too different than what a disc launcher should be, and it goes back to Mabel's point of stop making the same thing different.
Yeah. The thing that comes out of it should be standard, but maybe the packaging could be different.
It's very... I mean, all these ideas of, like, changing things is, like, really,
dangerous, yes.
Mad theory crafting. Yeah. It's,
Well,
it's
be
tough
glad we're not the
because-
developers, because they have to make something out of this mess.
One of the things I've read somewhere or was said somewhere before, I'm not sure if it was on here, but I've seen it said, and it's interesting. The way they're changing the game is not necessarily the wrong way to do it, but could be done better. They keep changing one little thing at a time, and then it makes that one change may fix that particular thing, but it makes other areas that much more apparent. I don't know if it's the necessarily wrong way to do it, but perhaps the method in which they make some large changes could be better. Maybe a suite of large changes.
Yeah, one thing, and it comes down to communication, really. Of course, the rule number one of game development is don't tell your audience everything. But I think it would be helpful to have a on the horizon list of things that, yes, guys, we've listened to you, we've seen it, we are working on it. Don't worry, it'll be included. So we can actually, as a community, include that in our conversations as well, considering we are so very involved in the development process. Well, we like to think we are. But yeah, I have a list of things. Yeah, I have a list of things, like not just 2 days before the patch, but say like Bart has done for the competitive thing. Like, yeah, there's going to be server flags. Yes, there's going to be generated dependence on loadouts. Don't worry, guys. Stop whining about it. But have some of the other developers do a similar list. That would
Honestly,
really
I
help.
vote Bart for president.
I think one of the problems, what you talked about the communication thing briefly. I think one of the problems is we don't feel like we're being listened to about gameplay balance, and that a lot of these things are just falling on deaf ears because we never hear from any of the game designers. I mean, we hear from Bart, and he's on IRC, bless him, right? Dealing with our all caps rage, but we never hear from anyone else on the forums or otherwise that has.
Well, the map designers, yes, but the rest no.
Oh yeah, a direct effect on the game balance and stuff like that. Doesn't feel like we get to hear any justifications for any of the things that we go this is broken in competition, and then the threats go unreplied to, 9,000 plus ones and no dev reply.
Yeah,
it's really frustrating. It's one of those. It's one of those things that I think if anyone played League of Legends early, that Riot Games got really right early, was they would on their forums and they would talk to people about that sort of thing. Whereas we feel like we don't get much of that now, and artificial as that may be, it's sort of one of those things that could really help them.
Yeah, fully agreed.
Well, in the alpha, I don't know which of you guys was in it for most part, but in the alpha they were a lot more communicative, and I think they are just getting an overflow of information. And they say they do their best to read everything, and I think they do read most of what we spew. But yeah, obviously they're a small studio, and they don't have as much time as we want them to spend on our precious forums.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I'd rather have them fix the game than talk to me all day.
Yeah, for me personally, it is a chore to read the forums right now. I think I don't know how it. I would vouch for community moderators. I would really love to get my hands in there. I have some Hi-Res, if you're listening, you are listening, so listen up. I have moderator experience. I've been community manager for a while. I can do this. I can ban all of these fuckers, just give me a chance. Give me a chance. No, but really,
Good thing you lagged out a bit there.
The forums are just a giant, either somebody says something that they agree with, so everyone plus one, plus one, plus one, plus one, and then there's 17 pages of good people mindlessly agreeing. That's fine, because it keeps the thread up there. But there is the constructive discussion gets lost. There's of course, a lot of people, their first opinions and stuff. That's good, but it's a lot of things have been said a million times over. A lot of things have even been implemented, and people drag up an old thread again, and it's such a mess. And I can understand that it's the same thing that happened to a much greater extent to the StarCraft forums, and now the Battle.net forums are just a cesspool. It's impossible to get a good conversation out of there because it's developed its own culture of trolling, and it's happening to the closed discussion as well. And there needs to be some kind of reaping.
I agree. Sign us all up. We will be your forum knight.
Knights and not the other N word.
That's a lot of pressure.
I'm not sure that that you can actually get that sort of like real discussion out of the forums, though. I think there are just like everyone that plays has access to it, and like not everyone that plays actually has an opinion that's worth anything.
Well, that's true at the moment, especially with the keys flowing out like free cookies. There are so many people that are playing the game already that simply regard it as finished, and they don't give a shit. They just log into their Tribes beta, play the game, and that's it. And they don't realize that it's still in testing phase. I think mostly because other game developers have been so keen on using betas not for testing but for promotion. So, people that want to, or really want to affect the outcome of the game will find the forum and start, talking and discussing. And we do have a lot of nice discussion, but most of the new people, they don't care. They just want to play the game.
Yeah, it seems like there's a few points that everyone, like that all generally top players will agree with, and those are the points that, like, we make these threads, they get ignored. We've been making them since alpha, they've been ignored since alpha.
Oh, yeah.
And you never hear from the game designers about why, and that sort of thing is going to get, like, it's just going to, like, really kill the top level community, or at least the really skilled top level community. They might evaporate and then have some other people come in, but
yeah,
it's like I really wish they would talk to us about that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and that's all it really is. It's just the communication with the community.
Yeah, because like we said, Bard's doing a bang-up job. He's really doing a good job. He's wading through IRC almost every day, and I wouldn't want to do it in his place. But on a lot of subjects, he just has to say, vague answer, because he can't say anything about it. And maybe there needs to be a chink in that armor somewhere.
Yeah.
Because,
We've asked him about this jump so many times.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, every time it's just like, Bart, so what about this jumps? And then he, poor guy just can't answer. Like, that sort of thing, I think that it would really help to have, like, some sort of, like, super moderated, like, thing where you talk to, like, the designers about that sort of stuff. Because, like, they want this to be played by these competitive players, right? And then they're like, well, and then the competitive players don't feel like they're even being listened to about these game-breaking things, like Dark Strands posts in the competitive forum, where it's just like, this game is too defense-oriented, like, just entirely too defense-oriented to be interesting to play, or to be interesting to watch. I know it's like watching the Bus Strikes match, for me, or Stack and Hack now, was interesting. It was really interesting to see how they played the game and, like, the things that they used. But, like, watching it as just, like, if I was sitting there, I'm not sure I'd be excited to watch that sort of match. And I think that's a real problem that needs to be addressed. I also have a big post about that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that talk you had mentioned, just a moderated talk that they could do. We are kind of in the middle of a kind of initiative on this podcast, bringing in as many developers as we can. We've had KP, Bart. Next week we actually have Sean, who's the lead art designer for the game, which will be pretty cool to have. It's just all these little one-pot shots, but I do agree. I would love to see let's get all the developers together, have a big moderated group chat, and see what we can pull out of them. I think that would be really awesome.
Well, I can actually relate to this. I'm a, small-time game developer. I run a small MMO, and once every month we have a moderated chat where an appointed community member, he has an IRC, and we get on there, and people get, one single person gets a voice at a time. They get to ask a question, either me or one of my colleagues replies, and then next person, and so on. We do that for 2 hours or so.
A panel, basically.
Yeah, basically a panel, or whatever you want to call it. It works very well. It keeps all our extremely obsessive players very happy because they get to ask direct questions every month. And honestly, 2 hours is not that much work. And of course, it's probably going to be in a weekend because then everybody can attend. And that might be problematic, but you don't even need everyone. Just a programmer or two would be amazing. Some of the guys that actually are behind the gameplay.
Yeah, well, who are not necessarily programmers, principal
designers.
Yeah, right. I think EVE Online has that in the form of a player council. Does anyone know that?
Oh yeah, but that was more of a union thing where they just rose up against the developer. We could still do that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's time for a tribes union yet, but
A fire truce.
I see what you did there.
Oh yeah.
Real clever.
Lore. Okay, well, that does put us about to an hour. Does anybody else have any other maybe finishing statements about they want to see, or?
Read my posts, +1 them if you agree, and please, discuss them. I'll gladly reply to anyone who has any questions or criticisms about the actual content in the posts.
Mention your forum name.
My forum name is Mabeline.
The hair products, yeah.
You said we wouldn't do that, Joni.
I'm sorry.
Okay. On that note, Mabel, I will be putting a link in the little description for this, so anyone interested can go and follow that link, and we'll be able to see it and read it.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're there.
Sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for showing up, especially you, Mabel, Greth, Joni. You're unpaid, and I expect to see you again next week. We have Sean next week coming on. He's the lead art designer for Hi-Rez. I hope I got that title right. We're really excited. We've got a list of questions from people on Reddit and emails, things along those lines, so we're excited to answer them. Thanks again for coming out, and see you in the game.
Bye-bye.
Send questions to Shazpod at shazpodcast@gmail.com. Still don't know our email address. 6 episodes.
He's going to get it right one day.
Yep, shazpodcast@gmail.com. Leave them on the comment section on the website, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Next week, we do have a couple questions in the inbox. We can get to those next week. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Bye-bye.